Hello everyone, Shorts Fiat here, and today I thought I'd share some of my first impressions on Farming Simulator 19. The game was released on Monday, and currently it's Wednesday, so I've had the game about 2 days, and I took some time off work so that I could play it, so at this point I'm about 18 hours into the game. So don't think of this as a full-fledged review because I haven't currently experienced all the content and stuff that the game has to offer, but I feel that almost 20 hours is enough for a good first impressions. Now I played around with a little stuff, but mostly forestry. Now the first thing I want to say about forestry is, as of right now, one of the new trees that they put into the game, this one, is having major collision detection issues with the branches, as well as major weight issues. It's kind of spotty as to whether or not you can pick up some of the stuff, and when you go to try to pick up certain things of it, even with the crane, it'll tip the thing over. So if you do want to get into forestry, do be aware that these trees are going to be a little bit of annoyance. And with one of the vehicles, this one here, for example, when I was trying to transport a bunch of branches, there were some major collision detection issues, and even though visually all the branches were laid in the trailer and coming out the end, it was saying that there was something here on the side, and not only did that prevent me from walking forward, I had to go all the way out to here just to walk in front of it and get around, but that was causing major issues with hitting the objects along the road and stuff like that, and made it so it was a nightmare just to get to and from where I needed to go with that. And not only that, it's not uncommon to see a lot of stuff just absolutely floating, and other times there have been branches and stuff, while it doesn't appear like it's physically touching other parts of it, it's still attached, which is really weird. But for the most part, it's not something that as of right now is too unbearable, it's just annoying. So you may want to keep that in mind if you want to get into forestry. Cutting down those trees may need to wait. Now, some people may say, well, that's not the trees that you plant anyway, so once you get rid of them, then you really won't have a problem, and true. So that's why it's not that huge of a deal, but I still think it's worth mentioning. Another thing that's worth mentioning with regard to the forestry aspect, you can no longer cut down any tree you want. You have to own the land. So for example, if I were to say, hey, that's a nice tree, I want to go cut it down, I go up to it with the chainsaw, hey, you don't have any access or permission to use this land. So the game is functioned on a land-based system, so if you go here, there's every bit of land, each bit has its own price, so you don't just buy fields now, you can actually buy lands, which means you can own some land that has no fields on it, which is an interesting concept. So if you want to get into forestry, you can buy stuff like this. The thing is, though, a lot of the maps or a lot of these areas that have a bunch of trees, they are extremely hilly. So like this one here, it was a cheap property that I bought, but it was extremely hilly, so starting out forestry there was a bit of a pain. I made the mistake of buying a cheap tractor to begin with, but I ended up having to sell it and borrow money to buy a much more advanced tractor, because the cheap one I had didn't have enough horsepower to get up the hill with the planter for the saplings. So that's another thing to keep in mind. You could start out by buying a flat area with a field and then just destroying the field if you want to get into forestry, but do be aware that you have to purchase the land itself. However, even though you have the inconvenience of having to buy the land first, that can be forgiven because, well, it does kind of make sense. You know, whereas in Farming Sim 17, it was nice that you didn't have to go around buying all the land. You could just cut down any tree you wanted, but that didn't make sense. And like I say, the aspects of these new trees are kind of annoying, but ultimately there have been some major improvements. For example, you know, I've got the wood here. In Farming Sim 17, you basically had to unload it, which was annoying. Here you just got to go up to it and hit a button, and you can sell all wood either in your trailer or in your truck or whatever vehicle you use to bring it, which is a very, very nice convenience feature. You know, there was a lot of time spent in Farming Sim 17 unloading the trailer individually, and it got to the point where in some areas I would just take the straps off and then back up and slam on the brakes and knock the branches out so they could sell, but now I don't have to do that. Now you can if you wanted to, I suppose, but I'm totally fine with not having to go down that route. Another nice feature is when you're grinding up branches and stuff into wood chips with either the placeable compactor or the one that you can carry around, there's no longer that issue where you put in small branches and it cuts out everything but the end and spits it back out, so you had a bunch of small branches everywhere. That issue is no longer a thing in Farming Sim 19, and believe me, I am happy for it. Oh wait, my trees were over here. Yeah. Alright. But I'll get the rest of that later. But I'll show you what I was talking about with the land that I own. If you look here, hit the X for land, everything that's green here is what I own. So I can only build stuff on that, but a lot of these cheaper territories are really hilly, so I can't put any placeables down. And I tried to convert this area into a forestry spot, and somehow I was able to fit 40 saplings here. But they're still growing, and I don't know how long it's going to take for them to grow, but hopefully once they grow, they'll just be the straight, tall trees that I won't have any issues. But cutting down all the annoying trees in this area first was a pain, but I guess that's to be expected. Once everything gets going, I should be in business. Another new tree that you may notice is the palm tree here, and the thing at the top of the palm tree, for some reason it won't let you cut it up. I guess it's too big, but this is too big to pick up by hand, obviously, and it's also too wide for the crane to pick it up. So I'm thinking that maybe I need to not cut it off at the end or something. I don't know, but that's something else to keep in mind if you cut down palm trees. Other than that, though, it's a good straight bit of wood. These trees are still annoying to cut down, and they're pretty much everywhere, but after having to deal with the new trees, those seem like a paradise, cutting those things down. Yeah. It's also important to note if you want to get into mowing and cutting up grass and stuff like that, that's also something... still got a branch here, it's too heavy. That's also something you can only do on your own land, so do keep that in mind. Now, there's a lot of other new features in the game that I'm really liking, and one of them, for example, is the revamp of the contract system. So there's different types of contracts here: transport, and then of course the standard, plowing, planting, and harvesting, and all that. Now they've redone the mission system from Farming Sim 17 to where you have the option of either using your own equipment or renting equipment. Now the renting, to rent it, it'll say right here, so like let's see, he wants field 26 harvested. He will pay 400 and, wait, really, it's going back to euros. Okay, I guess setting it to one currency in one region, or one save game, sets it for all. Okay, anyways, not a big issue. He'll pay $497, but if you have to rent the equipment, it's going to reduce the amount of money you make by $132, which I think is a neat little system that allows you to still have the mission set up kind of like what you had in Farming Sim 17, but also what I'm told was the system in Farming Sim 15, where you had to have the materials, whereas this mission system takes the best of both worlds, which is really nice. Another thing that's also nice with the mission system is they got rid of that stupid restriction that I hated a lot in Farming Sim 17 that prevented you from saving the game while you were on a mission, which was really annoying because if you're like me, you've got work and other things to do, and you may think, well, I want to start a mission, but oh no, I need to be going to bed in like an hour, so harvesting this field is going to take too long, and I don't want to leave the game running that amount of time. Well, thankfully that issue is resolved. You can save during a contract and come back to it just fine. In fact, I can demonstrate that here. So let's save this game and go back to the main menu. Alright. First off, before I go back into the save game, one of the things that I want to demonstrate is the new game setup. And personally, I think this game shipped with, or at least I think it shipped with more maps than Farming Simulator 17. I didn't place Farming Sim 17 from the start. But if you go to create a new game, well, let's just start with this new system here. For your career mode, you can do new farmer, farm manager, or starting from scratch. Now, I have no experience doing the new farmer or the farm manager setup because, well, starting out with a bunch of stuff just seems really annoying to me. And in any game I play, I like to start out with absolutely nothing. So that means in games like Minecraft, I did start out without the chest because I like starting out with scratch. And call me weird, but that's just the way I've always been in several other games as well. So when you have like 4X space strategy games, I hate starting with more than one planet, or in other games like Shogun 2 Total War, I hated playing as the Hojo or any other faction that started out with 2 territories. I don't like starting out with more than one thing. Thankfully here you have the option of starting out with basically nothing. Now there are 2 maps that shipped with the game, Felsburn and Ravenport. However, the developers have made the South American map, Estancia La Pacho, at least I think I'm pronouncing that right. Mi español no está buen. But this was available as a mod to download completely free. So essentially the game shipped with 2 new maps and, at least, well, I think Ravenport. I don't know if that was on the previous game or not. But they have the DLC map as well as the sugarcane from Farming Sim 17. So essentially the game ships with 3 different maps. So that right there is a good amount of variety as well. And it's nice to see that this map is officially imported over, so it's got the changes to adapt with the new system of purchasing land and all that. But let's just start. Well, I don't need to start a new game to explain it. Basically, when you start a new game and choose a map, if you choose the starting from scratch option, it starts you out with $500,000, which seems like a lot, but by the time you buy the land, equipment, and all that, you're really not left with much. But it allows you to choose your starting area, whereas in Farming Sim 17, you started out with the same fields every time, whereas here you get to choose your starting field. And not only that, but you get to do something that I think is pretty interesting, which is what I'm doing in this game here, so we'll go ahead and show that to you. Alright, so here we are. Now, in this game, or this particular map, I'm doing something a little bit different to take advantage of the setup that Farming Sim 19 has. Let's see, where am I? So basically what I'm doing is, in this game, I'm basically not taking ownership of any of the fields or anything like that, but I'm essentially acting like I'm the head of a labor company that provides the vehicles and labor to manage other people's fields. So my goal here is to essentially do this game 100% contract work. So I'm basically purchasing my own equipment and stuff to farm on other people's fields. And so what I'm telling myself that I'm not going to do in this particular game is rent equipment for any job. I'm going to try to grow my company, and if I don't have the equipment for a job, I'm not going to accept it. So I purchased this little bit of land here. I bought a very cheap machinery shed. I plan to upgrade it later. I bought, the thing to wash my machines, and then of course the little placeable to repair and maintain my machines. And I started out buying a basic cheap tractor, a cheap trailer, and a cheap harvester. And as you can see, I'm left with $27,000. So this is a field that I've been paid to harvest, so I don't own it. I'm just under contract with Sophia Dresner, and she wants me to harvest this field. Now the interesting thing about it is, not only can you have the option of saving the game and coming back to it during a contract, but contracts are now also way more involved. So for example, you don't just instantly teleport to the field and stuff like that with the machinery in hand. You've got to bring the machinery there yourself if it's your own machinery, or if you rent it, you got to pick it up from the shop and bring all the equipment from the shop to the field that you're harvesting, which adds a little more work to it, so it's not as quick as it was in Farming Sim 17, but I do love it. And not only that, but with harvesting resources, it no longer functions like it did in 17, whereby when you're harvesting under contract, the harvesters had unlimited room in the container. They never got full, which kind of made no sense, because I remember in Farming Sim 17 there was that one area field, I think it was the top right of the main map of Farming Sim 17, and I was paid over $100,000 to harvest potatoes. It took me 3 hours to harvest the entire field, but yet somehow all those potatoes fit into a single harvester, which didn't make sense. Whereas now, they've got it to be a lot more realistic, and even if you're renting equipment, it fills up, and they're not just paying you to harvest the resources, you've also got to transport them to the destination of their choice, which is kind of an interesting aspect, but I absolutely love it because it makes, in my opinion, contract work more interesting. You're not just going around in the field the whole time and then being like, hey, and then, because that can get bored real quick, you know, once you get full and once you fill up the trailer, you know, you're going to have to take several trips into the area where they want you to sell it. Now, I'm not sure if you can hire workers to do this. I guess we'll see. Okay. Yes, you can. Okay. Okay, well that's something you couldn't do in Farming Sim 17. Okay, that's the first time I tried it, but great. Which again is one of the reasons that I'm really loving this, because this is essentially going to create a new type of game play that I'm, like I say, that I'm doing here, and where I'm working as a company where myself and my employees farm other people's fields. So this would actually work out great. So this means that I'd have to manage the labor cost versus the profit from harvesting them. Okay, yeah. Like I say, this is going to be really fun, and yeah. So you can be harvesting that while I do the transport loads. So, let's see what you got. Whoa, 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 slow it down. Steady, steady. Alright. Alright, so let's see. Where does she want this dropped off? Alright. The northern ports. Roger that, man. Okay, yeah, but like I say, I'm really loving this because this is stuff that you couldn't do in Farming Sim 17, you know, with the work you were doing for other people, you had to do it exclusively yourself, and yeah. So, like I say, this is making it a lot more fun, so if you've ever been interested in basically just being a worker for hire and managing a business that way, Well, you can definitely do that now in Farming Sim 19. Let's see, where is the northern? All the way up there. One of the other nice things about it is they do still have the similar system in Farming Sim 17 where you don't have to necessarily get every single inch of the field, and that's the same with harvesting. However, if you do have any harvesting contracts, I highly recommend that you harvest every single bit of it, because the thing is, the contract technically completes when you have the vast majority of the crop harvested and deposited at the location that they request. However, in every one, if you manage to harvest every single bit of the field, there's a little bit extra that when you go to dump it in there, once it reaches 100% completion, that extra is sold directly and considered yours. So sometimes I've had contracts where I harvested a field, but then the little extra after it said the contract was completed that I got gave me an additional like $4,000 or $5,000, which I was totally okay with. Now, I don't know if I'm saying that in a way that makes sense, but I guess to try to make it as simple as possible, you don't have to harvest every single piece of the field to complete the contract, but if you do, I would say about 2 to 3% of the field's total harvest, you could actually sell on your own. Now, it is important to note, however, that if you rented the vehicles, as soon as you click to complete the contract, all those vehicles will disappear. So that's something to keep in mind, so you want to make sure that you've sold it. Now, I'm not entirely sure if you can take that excess after the contract is complete and deposit it in a silo. I haven't tried that yet, mainly because you don't start with a silo by default. They are placeable just like in Farming Sim 17, but you got to buy them initially. So now I'm not sure if you... Now that may be different if you start out with one of the other game modes, but you definitely don't start out with a silo and starting from scratch. Another nice feature is if you bring up the map now, it no longer stops your vehicle in motion, so we can just quickly bring up and see what we got here. Wait. Whoa, wrong button. It does stop it if you hit the wrong button to get out. Alright, so let's just take a look at the contract. Okay, so I just got to make sure that the amount of money that I'm ended up having to pay my workers doesn't exceed the amount of money that I'm getting for the contract. Otherwise, I'm not going to make a profit. And here I am driving on the wrong side of the road. Oh, and a roundabout. Now I'm going to have that song stuck in my head. Downside of listening to Korean music. Alright, let's get on the trailer here. Now, the 54% complete. Let's deposit it. Alright, so 53% of the harvest has been successfully transferred. So now we go back, and by this point, our hired helper should be done. I wonder if it'd be quicker to go... I don't know. Let's just go this way. Maybe you can see more of the countryside. Now, there is another type of contract that are basically transport contracts. Now, these are ones where you have to have the vehicles yourself to do it. You can't rent any vehicles, and they generally don't pay a lot of money. I've only seen one that's even anywhere close to $1,000. Most of them are like between $200 to $600. But they are relatively easy to do, and you don't need to invest a lot to get them up and running. Basically, you'll need either a forklift or a tractor with a front loader and a trailer in order to be able to haul the goods. You basically have to pick up pallets, 1 or 2 pallets at one location, load them onto your trailer, and then transport them to another location, and then of course unload them at the designated spot. So it's relatively simple to do, although figured and that one's already full. Okay, I'm not paying you. Okay, yeah. I just had to terminate the helper because I'm not letting him hemorrhage money while he's waiting on me. You're not going to do any work, you're not going to get paid. Just that simple. And I hope I'm going the right way. Oh yeah, I completely missed a road. Boo. Oh well, still going to get there. Now, while traveling, one thing I would like to point out is just like with Farming Sim 17, I haven't encountered any real performance issues, and the only one that I really did, I'm kind of thinking that that's something on my end. My graphics card is a little bit outdated. I'm still using a NVIDIA GTX 760. I have a 1080 graphics card, Titan. The problem is I'm not the greatest when it comes to working with computers, and after buying the card, I came to realize that I don't have a power supply sufficient enough for a 1080, which kind of sucks, and I don't know how to replace the power supply or anything about it. The only thing I really know to replace are video cards. So, yeah. Still running on a 760, so I have a lot of games that are having really bad performance issues. But the fact that this one is only acted up for a very little or short time, and that was in a populated city after playing the game over 11 hours straight, I think that that is perfectly excusable, and I honestly kind of think it's probably more of an issue on my end than anything else. So on an older PC, I think the PC's about 3 or so years old. Like I say, not sure exactly when I bought it. When I did buy it, it came with a 680 graphics card, then I upgraded to a 760. So that should indicate how old it is. Several years at least. But it can still run this game just fine, so. No real performance issues there. I also haven't encountered the issue that I had in Farming Sim 17, where if you go to launch the game while you're watching a YouTube video, it crashed. So, thankfully that's no longer an issue. Though I'm not sure how many of you actually experienced that to begin with. Wait, do I still have the tractor on? Yes, I do. Oh. No point in having you on. Hey, wrong vehicle. Alright. Now I think while I explain the rest, I'll just have my helper get back to work here. Camera. Another thing I did notice too about the vehicles, it's a change that I'm not entirely sure I like, but I guess it's more realistic. When you go to turn your wheels and you go to hit the forward key, at least I don't think this was the case in Farming Sim 17. I think when you hit the forward key it kind of auto-corrected, but now, I guess, might not ignore what I just said. Maybe that's just an issue with me personally. But anyways, while the helper's doing that, one of the other downsides that I've seen with the game, or problems that I have, is that the Placeables tab is severely lacking this time around. There are some good, but then there's some things that I don't like. So for example, in the base game, that's all you have for sheds. Just 3 options, which, yeah, seems very limited. You can buy a farmhouse. Now, the house is different depending on which map you play. So, the one that you can have here is not the one that you can get in the other 2 maps. So, a nice little touch. Kind of annoying, though, that you can't mix and match, but I guess they want to keep the countries the same. Then you have the purely decorative objects. You can get a sandcastle now. Another thing that I've also noticed is that the decorative options also vary depending on what map you're playing, which, again, I can kind of see that, but ultimately on the other end of the spectrum, I don't see the harm in having all of them available and letting the player choose which decorations they want, even if it may not make sense in the country. I mean, isn't it the player's choice to decide that? But what do I know? And then for the silos, like I say, at least in the starting from scratch option, you don't start out with a silo. So you have to buy them. And these are all your options. You have your standard silo, your large silo, and then the silo expansion. Then you have your grass and hay storage, and I assume that these are areas to do your own silage working. That's it for there. For the diverse, you have your cleaner, your workstation, your placeable to grind up and automatically sell, and then your water tank. That's it. And that's about it. One major change they made is that animal places, so your dog, your chicken, your cows, your horses, and your pig and sheep pens are purely placeables now. So that's kind of a nice touch, and that's one thing that I definitely like. I haven't played around. I never really played around much with animals to begin with because I never really grew the crops necessary for them. But eventually I would like to work with animals, particularly sheep and chickens and of course horses, because, well, my nickname is Schwarz Fiat, which stands German for black horse, so naturally I need a field of black horses. So yeah. So the fact that this is all placeables now is really nice, and I think that this is also going to be great for when the mod community gets up and running, because the mod community, at least in Farming Sim 17, made some really incredible maps, which I absolutely love. My favorite, of course, being the forest maps, where you start out with a area of land completely filled with trees, and you had to clear it out. I mean, in one example in Farming Sim 17, on one such map, I easily put, I don't know, a ridiculous amount of hours into it, clearing out an area, placing several houses, using one of the modded tools to create roads. I plowed out a road, I planted several fields, and I had a very booming town, kind of, by the time it was all said and done. And I even had a solar power plant. Yeah, I played that one way too much, but it was just so gratifying to know that I started that map with an area full of trees. I cleared out all the trees myself. The downside of the maps like that, there were no places for animals and no pens and stuff like that, which makes sense. But now that they have the new system in place whereby animal pens are placeable, I can see maps like that becoming even more popular, So you can clear out land with a bunch of trees on it and eventually convert it into an area to raise livestock, which I think is going to be cool. The possibilities are really great there. The downside, though, that I see is that in the Placeable tab, there are no passive money makers, which I'm a little bummed out about that because I like having the beehives and the solar power plants and the wind power plants. I thought that was a nice thing to have, but they're not there now. Boo. However, I'm hoping that they'll eventually make their way into the game, but we'll see. At first I was kind of hoping that mods would bring them into the game, but then again, I'm not sure. I have to wonder if the code for them is even there, because if they didn't have any base placeables that work as passive money makers, I don't know if that means there's no code in the game for that to happen, and so I don't know if modders will make it happen. We'll see. When I did look through the help system at showing the symbols, they had the symbols for, I think, the money per minute, or something like that. I can double check. Let's see here. Help. Okay. Okay, yeah, like here, and for the symbols part 1, the very first symbol that it mentions is, hourly income, shows how much money per hour you're earning. So, hopefully, I'm hoping that the code's in the game, but we'll see. I mean, I would be quite bummed if there were no solar power plants or anything like that, or passive money makers. Now, some people may say, well, those kind of things make the game way too easy, and perhaps. But ultimately, I think that being as it's mostly a single-player game, there is multiplayer. I think that's something for the player to decide. If you don't like the idea of having passive money makers, well then, just don't buy them. But those of us that do can really enjoy that. Because like I say, I really love creating my own solar power plant in Farming Sim 17, especially when you take into account there was that mod that essentially made it so you could take that rolling tool and make roads and other things like that. Now, with regards to what tools are available, we can see here, and again, the nice thing is it'll keep going on while I'm harvesting, as long as it's going in a straight line. You have compact tractors, your medium-sized tractors, your large tractors, a lot of the standard stuff that you had before. The only real thing new is the cotton picker. Shop. Yeah, there are a couple of new machines. So for example, in the forestry, I think these two right here are new. This is the one that I bought in the previous game. And I think you have a new system right here. Alright, that's done. Oh, you can't bring up the shop while it's paused. Boo. Alright, another nice thing though about it is when you go to select it now, this is one thing that I really like, it actually takes you to a garage, and the changes that you make to it, it shows you what it looks like. So that's a really nice new feature. And coincidentally, while I'm thinking about it, when we go to tools, I mentioned previously transport contracts. And if you're going to do transport contracts, this is the one that I recommend. Now, we could go here, and you may say, well, it doesn't look like it'd be easy to put pallets on there. Well, if you go to the configuration and put it to bales, that's perfect for hauling 2 pallets. So this right here is ideally what I would personally recommend you start with if you want to engage in transport contracts. But do keep in mind that it has an initial cost of $8,000, and each contract only pays about, again, like $200 to $800 or $900. So you can eventually earn your money back, but it'll take a while. But I guess that's to be expected for this game. But it's nice to see that you have all these different variations, and I assume that if you go back to it, you can just upgrade it later. So for example, I think with the vehicle that I got, let's just take here, the Valtra, I think that its horsepower can be upgraded. I'm not sure. Let's see. Yeah, the Valtra A104. Motor. Okay, its horsepower can be upgraded a little bit. I don't think I upgraded that, because, let's see, go back to the garage. Yeah, I'm at 74 horsepower. For $5,000, I can go back and upgrade its engine, but I didn't think I needed to really do that now, since I'm just starting out. But yeah, it's a really nice touch that you can configure what you want before you get it, and actually see the changes. Some of these changes are interesting. Like, that just looks weird. I just can't picture a tractor like that. It looks more like one of those old-timey tractors or old-timey cars. I'm sure there's some practical reason for that, but I don't see it. But anyways, the point is the garage has been greatly improved. And all in all, there's just basically been a lot of things that have been drastically improved. So overall, I definitely feel that it was worth the $35. Although, do keep in mind, full disclosure, at my job I make roughly $20 an hour, so $35 to me doesn't really seem like much, so it may be a lot to you, so you can think about it from there. But all in all, there's been some major improvements, like I say, with forestry. That one issue of it spouting out the, the small branches and the grinders is no longer an issue. The convenience of just being able to drive the trailer up to the area and selling all is also nice. Contracts have been greatly improved. I just absolutely love the fact that with contracts I can now save the game and go do something else. And not only that, but so far I haven't seen any time limit. And if there is, it's none that I'm aware of. I mean, you go back here to the contract, there's nothing that says anything about a time limit. Now, I'm assuming eventually they may get annoyed, but you know, as of right now, I haven't noticed anything, and I'd imagine that if you let it go too long for like a harvesting contract to where the crop actually withers out, then yeah, they'd have some issues with that. But overall, the fact that there's no time limits is just amazing, because I don't really like being on the time limit, and I find that to be a major annoyance. About the only game that I've been okay with time limits on was Anno 2205. But in that game, if you failed the time limit on the missions, it was no really big loss, so it didn't matter. But in games where you have a lot riding on it, like in games like this or other ones, I'm just not a huge fan of time limits at all. Which is why I've never played an XCOM game. I hear they're good, but yeah. Being forced on a time or a turn limit, yeah. But yeah, there seems to be no time limits here in contracts, which is really nice. And again, the option to either use your own equipment or rent it is also great, because it makes it accessible for everyone. And again, as I understand it correctly, it looks like it's bringing the best of both worlds, from the way Farming Sim 17 was and the way I'm told Farming Sim 15 was. Because again, I never played 15. I just heard from one of the YouTubers that made a comment that in Farming Sim 15 you actually had to own the equipment. Don't know for sure if that's true, because I started the series in 17. So overall, I do think it's an improvement over 17, but at current state it is lacking in some areas. You know, again, there are very few placeables, so if you're looking for the passive income placeables and stuff like that, that's not in the game yet. but I think this is something that mods and patches will quickly bring in. I mean, there's already been several officially released mods, as they call them, from the Giant Software, like I mentioned, the DLC map from Farming Sim 17 that added the South American map, which I think was nice of them to include for free, because launching with 3 maps means that, well, I guess you could technically classify that as a good amount of content. Not only that, but I also really like the fact that even on the starting from scratch option, you do not start out in debt like you did in Farming Sim 17. So if you want to avoid debt entirely, you can definitely do that. And, you know, the 500,000 that it starts you out with, even in this starting condition, is still a decent amount. I mean, I was able to buy land, a couple placeables, a starting harvester, and a basic transport system here. And on the forestry setup, I was able to buy some decent forestry equipment right off the bat. So, I definitely like the new starting situation. Again, though, I don't know about the other two because I don't like starting out with stuff. But overall, I think it's definitely an improvement over Farming Sim 17, and it's one of those things where I don't think I'll be able to go back to Farming Sim 17. I mean, I know in some ways 17 does have more content, but this is an excellent foundation, and I can see this game easily surpassing and replacing Farming Sim 17. Although currently there are a lot of people that are claiming that, oh, it's just Farming Sim 17 2.0, or one German claimed that it was Farming Sim 17 with a different name. But I have a feeling that's to be expected because, you know, there's lots of people, they suddenly think that the game is just going to be all in all leaps and bounds better from the start, but I guess in some ways, though, you could probably think of Farming Sim like some people think of the Civilization series, and that is, you don't want to buy it when it comes out, you want to wait till the next one comes out, then buy the previous one. Now, whether that's entirely true, I don't know. I'm enjoying my purchase, but then again, me making $20 an hour in real life may be part of the reason that I consider the $35 asking price to be totally worth it. And there you can kind of see what I'm talking about. The contract was completed, but there was a little extra left over because I harvested everything, so I made a profit of 520. Now, when you go over here, the contract is complete, everything's done. Since I didn't have to rent any equipment, I get the full amount of $2,375. So you can either click this or hit the spacebar to complete the contract. Now let's just check finances and to see if I actually made a profit. So, okay, it looks like I easily did. I paid $540 in labor. So the $520 that I got from the extra sale, that's negative 40, subtract that, so it looks like I came away, after cost of labor, with $2,355. Not all that much, but some profit is better than no profit. Alright, so let's see, what other contracts do we have here? Okay, now with this, we are harvesting corn. I do not have a corn harvester, so I don't know if I want to accept that contract right away. How much is a corn harvester? Okay, a cheap one is 17,000. Okay, the thing is, though, right now it seems kind of pointless to spend 17,000 on something, a job that's to do something that'll take only pay 869,000 or $869. Okay, he wants potatoes harvested. There's no way I can do that. More potatoes. Sunflowers. winter canola. I could do that one, or potatoes. Okay, now, let's see. Field 6. Where is field 6? Yeah, harvesting that with a basic one, that might take a while, but that'd be a fair bit of money. Oh well, I'll do that on my own time. Anyways, all in all, I think the game is an improvement. It's an excellent foundation, but if you want to hold off and keep playing Farming Sim 17 for a couple months, that wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea, because there is some more content in some areas than in Farming Sim 17, but then in other areas like the Placeables, it's lacking. So I guess in summary, what I'm saying is, in short, the game is good. It's running very stably, very well, performance-wise. I haven't had any issues. If you want to get into forestry, there are some major improvements, but be aware the new trees are having collision issues that may cause a bit of annoyance. So yeah, if you want to get into forestry, you may want to wait till that issue is fixed. If you like the idea of contract work and you want to do what I'm doing in this particular game, which is basically having a company that doesn't own any of your own fields but just works for everybody else's field, you can definitely do that. That's a very viable playstyle now, which is absolutely awesome. I love it, and I have a feeling I'm going to love this particular playstyle more than any others, because, well, I like the idea of business management, and this would be ultimately a business management. I suppose managing a farm itself is considered a business, but still, you get the idea. This does add a little bit of gameplay variety. So, if you like that idea, then Farming Sim 19 may be the way to go. Again, it starts out with 3 different maps, which is a good bit of variety there. I think the base game only started with 2, or Farming Sim 17 only had 2. So I guess, again, in a nutshell, if you want to get into forestry, you may want to hold off. If you like the idea of passive income buildings, you may want to hold off as well. But if you like the idea of managing a company where you just do work for other people, then yeah, definitely pick it up. Or just the farming in general is improved, because now there's a couple new crops, I believe, that they've added. Let's see, where is it? Like the help. Okay, yeah, we've got, let's see, I think, well, yeah, we had wheat, oh shoot, what is just, barley, I think that's what that is, winter canola, sunflower, soybeans, corn. Honestly, I don't know what that German word is. I'll look it up at some point. I'm slowly learning. That is a new crop. Not even sure what that looks like. Anyways, potatoes, sugar beets, papple, and of course you have the new cotton. I haven't played around with cotton, but that's kind of expensive to get into. Let's see if we go bring up the store. Yeah, the base one is the Case IH, the only one available. Yeah, that's 485,000. So cotton is something that you really, I don't think you can get into start. I don't know if there's any cheaper stuff. Let's see, balm wool. Yeah, these are just for the transporting of the cotton bales. So I think if you want to get into the cotton, that would be really expensive. Although I do think that middle game mode, when you go to start out, starts you out with over $1 million or something like that. So that would probably be the way to go if you want to start getting into cotton right off the bat. But other than that, I guess the other one of the major changes is weeding is now a necessity, I believe. I haven't really played around too much with that. Yeah, you've got to basically not only spray fertilizers but pesticides now and weed it and all that. Otherwise, it could create problems, and they've changed up the system. Let's see. Yeah, and in Farming Sim 17, we can pause it while we're doing this. In Farming Sim 17, if I remember correctly, you basically had 3 levels of fertilization. So you could go through and spray it with fertilizer, and that would count as one, and or run it through, spray it again at a next stage of growth, and that would count as two, or something like that. Or what I did in Farming Sim 17 was, when I'd plant the seeds, I'd get one of those seeders that had a fertilizer within it, so it would fertilize it as it's seeded. Then when the plant started to come up, I'd go through with the weeder, and then when they grow up a little bit more, I'd go through with the weeder again, and that would count as my 3 fertilization stages to maximize the yield. But they've changed it up a little bit here. To get a bonus of 65%, you have to use fertilizer on it twice for additional 25% each time, and then of course you got to spray it with that stuff after 3 harvests to increase it by 15%. Looks like lime, I'm not sure. Again, new words that I haven't bothered to look up yet. And then, of course, to prevent it from losing the thing, it says don't forget that to reduce the yield rate by 35%, you need to first of all remove the weeds and stuff. Otherwise, you're going to have a minus 20% to yield. And then it says after the harvesting of corn, potatoes, sugar beets, or sugar cane, you need to plow it. Otherwise, you're going to have minus 15%. So I'm not sure if that means you don't have to plow it like you did in Farming Sim 17 every 3 times. I'm not sure, but that's just what it says. I mean, I may not know every German word, but there's no way I'm not translating that correctly. But yeah, so that's changed up, but I don't really need to go into the change or worry about translating, because all this information is here in its handy guide. So they're really good about providing you the information that you need, which is really nice, because in a lot of games you'd have to go onto a wiki to figure it out, but here they have an explanation of how to do it and plenty of pictures to show it as well. So they're really good. I don't know how the tutorial is. I didn't bother with the tutorial because I figured I did the tutorial in 17, so I wouldn't need to do it here. But not only that, but tutorials tend to overload you with a lot of information right from the start, whereas here with this handy guide, it shows you pretty much everything you need when you want to know it. So, and again, it clearly shows you what icon is what, so that's good. Lots and lots of helpful information here. And with the special crop, like this entire section here is dedicated to sugarcane, to fully explain to you how it grows and stuff like that, and how to harvest it, how to transport it, and all that good stuff. I really like that it does show you all the stages, so you can see it's like, oh, this is when it's ready for harvest. Of course, you could also tell by looking at the map, but anyways. But yeah, it's a lot of good information here that fully explains everything, so yeah. Again, though, all in all, I think it is better than Farming Sim 17, and it's definitely a foundation for a lot more things to come. So I can see just the mere 20 hours that I'm getting by the end of the day to be just the beginning. I can easily see myself playing this for hundreds and hundreds of hours. And again, I really don't think I could go back to Farming Sim 17. So even though you have a lot of people saying that it's just Farming Sim 17 with a new name, in my personal opinion, I disagree. Of course, it's up to you to form your own opinions. Feel free to check out other people's videos. Don't just, to quote the late Total Biscuit, just use my video as a tool in your toolbox, not as the definitive video that you see to make the choice. There are other YouTubers that are way more experienced into Farming Sim than I am. I mean, I like the series, but I don't focus on it like a lot of other YouTubers do. I like my city builders and other styles of game too. But yeah, all in all, I think it's a great game. Definitely worth it in my opinion. Few bugs, but that's to be expected. And I think they'll be ironed out. And with mod support and all that being a thing, I can see this, like I say, easily surpassing. I mean, I'm already at the point where I don't think I want to go back to Farming Sim 17. I mean, I have spent a lot of time in there, and I would like to do more, but, well, I have this game now, so I don't need 17 anymore. Even though I spent a lot of time and I've developed an attachment to my farms there, I may very well end up uninstalling 17. So, but hey, if you're on a budget, 17 is still great. I assume it's going to be cheaper than this one, but again, this game I think is worth it so far. And yeah, so hopefully I gave you some information to make your decision as to whether or not you want to buy the game. And in that case, thanks for watching and have a great day.